Rabbi say.
We are starting.
We're going to learn next few classes about Pas Akim, bread from a goy, and Bishul Akum, when a goy cooks. Now, both halachas are extremely important because we in LA, we have housekeepers. We call it shiksa, housekeepers. And, the Rabbi just asked me the other week, a few minutes before Shabbos, I think you called me, and someone called you with a problem with the gefilte fish. The shiksa put up the gefilte fish. Is that a problem? Not a problem. These things happen all the time. And people don't realize it's easy to fix, easy to make sure it's not a problem. And sometimes people have relatives, which causes problems. So, we'll learn these halachas. It's interesting, these halachas. First, I want to explain, before we go, when did the Chazal make the Gzeira? Pas Akim, Bishul Akim, Yain Nesach. Pas Akim means the goy makes bread. Bishul Akim cooking, Yain Nesach. That Gzeira, according to most Rishonim, was after beginning of Bayis Sheni. Between Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni was, unfortunately, the Jews intermarried. They intermarried. They were in Golas, and the shiksa across the street looked better. The grass on the other side looks greener. And they intermarried. It was a disaster. Chazal went and, I say in English, you say implemented certain gzeiros, which is Bishul Akim, Pas Akim, and we'll let you see all the gzeiros, and that literally saved Klal Yisrael, believe it or not. Because most often a person has a wife who is not Jewish, most often he is a gon. He's a goner. The times you learn Nach, you know what? They fasted Yom Kippur. I one time had, I don't want to say the name of the city, but a shliach called me up, Chabad shliach. There's a guy who wants to sell his business. Shabbos has a whole problem. One of his nursing comes, he wasn't here, it was in a different city, and we worked it out, and I faxed him, a whole story. Then he calls me a few months later, he asks me, a non-Jewish lady cooks, is that upon Bishul Akum? I say, yeah, it's upon Bishul Akum. I have a major problem. My wife is a shiksa. I said, what? A few months ago, he said he makes me sell the business of it because he wants to make sure he's some Shmira Shabbos Kil Chosai. And now, I called the shliach, and the shliach says no. He explained to me that his son became religious, and his father, grew up secular. It was a second marriage. His son became from a second marriage. He's not a young man. He just can't do it. He keeps everything. He just can't do it. It's not so. But normally, when a guy starts slipping, by the time he has a wife that is not Jewish, you forget about Shabbos, you forget everything. And the truth is that way. The Chazal with the Gzeiris this kept us in balance. It's incredible Gzeiris. It's the wisdom of Chazal. Whenever I think about the wisdom of Chazal, I always think about these Gzeiris. It's a small thing, but that kept us not to intermarry. So this is what Chazal made. In the Iker, intermarriage destroys Klal Yisrael. First of all, the children are not Jewish, that's number one. And second of all, if they literally join very often, the wife, I hate it. Let me tell you a quick story. I went to look for a house, and I come into the house, and I burst out laughing. And the lady who took me to buy the house, one side of the wall, there was Yoshka hanging with a big tzelem. The other side of the other wall, there was a big painting of a rabbi. I asked the agent, what is this? So she laughs. This is a couple. He's Jewish and she's not Jewish. And they're both liberals and both are professors, and they said that, no religion in their marriage. After a few years of marriage, he decided to get back in touch with her. So she got a painting. He says, I got in touch with my religion. He bought a painting of a rabbi. They were hanging a rabbi in one wall, and this wall was hanging at Salem. The truth is, that, the Rashba says, often people intermarry, they schlep the whole family down. The man, it joins. But Kitza, that's why the Chazal made these Gzeiras. And it's a Chomadig Gzeira. It's not so, many people, that don't realize. So let me just say, the Rabbi said I shouldn't explain. The middle, this is the Mechaber. Mechaber was who lived, probably 500 years. The Mechaber lived in the Shiurim, which is the Tuf Shiurim, for a little bit, almost 500, a little less than 500 years. And the Shach, the Sipsek Kohen on the side, is the commentaries on the Mechaber. That's the Shach. I want to tell you, do you know how old the Shach was when he printed his Sefer in the entire Yeridea? How old? 24 years old. No. I think he was 21, not 24. Either 21 or 24 years old. And he lived in the times of the Kazakh, and how you say the Khmelnytsky. The Russians know about this. And he died of the age of 42. And he wrote Svarim, which literally boggles the mind. He's every few generations we had these minds, which is just awesome. The Shach was just awesome. He wrote this when he was a young man. They wanted to put him Chedim. A young man writes a Sefer Yeridea. So his Rebbe was Reb Hesher Kruker, was the famous a good ladar, and he said at the famous meeting Abu Arutzes that this Talmud learns Torah Lishma. Even the Alter Rebbe, the Kintas Achron, I always point out to people, we see how he's, when he talks about the Shach, it's frightening. Like if you want to disagree with him, you say a whole introduction. You don't just disagree with the Shach. You better be right disagreeing with the Shach. You know what I mean? It's called Sifse Koyen. He was a Koyen. It was called Shach. And the Taz happens to be the Terezuov. He was an old Rav, and he wrote the Sefer, and that was the Taz and the Shach. But in Halacha, most often we accept the Shach against the Taz.
Are we going to learn the Shach inside?
Well, we're going to learn, some of them. Yeah, the important ones. Try to get the important ones. So, now let me, before we learn this Halacha, I want to explain what is Pas and what is Bishul. Pas is bread. Okay? Now, bread, it doesn't mean bread because today, in the times of Shulchan Aruch, but today you could buy bread, anything you want. They make bread from rice, they make bread from corn, they make bread from soy. Bread is only of the 5 grains, which is chitim, wheat, barley, spelt, oat, and rye. These are the 5 things that the bread, this is called bread. Anything not that is not called bread. That doesn't go into Pasakim. That's the bread. No, yeah, right. If you mix the two together, that goes, right? You have to go with the majority. That is true. We'll later see in Shulchan Aruch. So that's called bread. Anything that cooking is called cooking. Now, what is the difference? Chazal had different halachas about baking and different halachas. Let me explain something quickly. We'll get to it in more detail. When they made the Gzeira of Pas Akim, the Gzeira was not accepted all over. Why? Because even those days, most people didn't bake their own bread. There was a bakery, and it was almost impossible for people to eat bread. So the Gzeira was solely almost not, in many places, not accepted. That's why Chazal later made kulas about bread. Huge kulas about Pas Akim. You know what I mean? And I know many people are confused. Many people are confused about the Rizal was Machmer, what the Chassidim is Machmer. It's very confusing. We'll get to know what the Halacha is, and we will see. But first, this is Pas, and there's Bishul. I want to just say one big nafkamina, because the right away we'll have in the Shulchan Aruch. Bishul applies only that something that's oila al shulchan malachim. Let's take the gefilte fish. The gefilte fish, if the shiks are made, you never serve gefilte fish at an important meal. Malachim doesn't mean king.
That's 5 say for sure.
No. You never, in the middle of the week, you make an important meal, your wife will never serve a gefilte fish. The reason we do it Shabbos, cholent is also not very chashiv. You never see cholent middle of by wedding. You ever saw cholent by wedding? No, wait. Yeah. No. At the wedding, no. They serve cholent in the back. But the meal, there is no cholent. That's a fact. Cholent is never served at a chashiv ball. We never went to a fundraising and they gave cholent. You never went to a fundraising, they gave gefilte fish.
Maybe they would get more money if they did.
No, I'm not explaining, just, it's not chashiv. That's it. You know why gefilte fish, the Ashkenazim eat gefilte fish, the Sfardim? No. But that's beide. Shabbos is a problem of beide. So they came up with this thing hundreds of years ago, it's mentioned already, and that's why I ate gefilte fish. Gefilte, which they took care of the bones before, and they wanted to make it look nice, and make gefilte fish. The Sfardim eat fish salad. No? Isn't this? No, he's not here, the Sfardi. Our local Sfardi. Yeah, but they eat fish salad. No, they eat, no? You grew up, no. But the Sfardim, I asked the Sfardim, tell me, they ate the same idea. They would take out the bones before Shabbat and make a salad, crush the fish a little differently. So this is, but anyways, fish, I'm just explaining. Bottom line is, gefilte fish, if the shiksa made it, is not a problem. It's not oila shulchan malachim. I'll elaborate. Let me just briefly explain it. The idea was, the Chazal said, your shiksa next door might invite you, and sit down and make a nice meal, and make it eat together. And the next thing you see his daughter and you see his son, and that's why the Chazal. We'll see get into detail later. So the Chazal has to be something that you will make a meal and mimechabit, how you say, respect a guest. You will. This is so melik. It's not a problem. Now, bread, it doesn't have to be oila shulchan malachim. Bread could be expensive bread. Today you go to weddings, they never serve a loaf of bread. They serve the small bagels, and they serve, by bread, that rule doesn't apply. So you have to remember, so if it's bread, certain rules apply. So bread, our bread, we get sliced bread, okay? Or bagels. You don't serve at a choshev, bagels. They serve either the bilkele. I looked always in, the small round things. When I go to a wedding and I go to any of these things, I always looking at what they're serving. Got to know halacha all the time. Things change drastically. I used to think that potatoes is not oil shulchan malachim. Because the potatoes, whenever you go to a wedding, give potatoes, it's small round potatoes. I went to a very, very wealthy wedding in my shul Zomei. And guess what? There was potatoes, but it was made into two doves. Everyone got a plate, and the potatoes were made, how was it called in English? Formed into two doves. You know what I mean?
Mashed potatoes?
Mashed potato, but it was made into...
because that guy did it.
That's the question now. How will you look at mashed potatoes?
So in general, is this stuff subjective? So like what was
That
considered
is,
kosher 100 years ago?
that's in Eretz Yisrael. I was told in Eretz Yisrael they would serve weddings potato kibble, and in Yerushalayim at weddings. Here in America, no one would dare serve potato kibble at a wedding. In Eretz Yisrael, it is Bishul Akum, but potato kibble would not apply. That's for sure. It has to do where, and they should. The person can keep on talking about these things, about chestnut. The what?
Something along the time that the mint, not the
No, there's no. We'll soon see in a minute, not that way. I don't know where people get this out. Yeah, the Mechaber says Mefurish not that way. In a minute, you'll soon see. This was the breath is not a problem.
So when oil shulchan malachim, you're mentioning improving Yidden today in the president in America.
Not the president. That's another mistake. Rabbi said, Oil shulchan malachim doesn't mean malachim, does not mean king. The Mishnah says shulchan malachim means a shulchan of wealthy people. Rashis, the Bartanur explains in Mishnah Novis. Malachim means a rich ball. Where wealthy people make a ball, a wedding, a fundraising thing. Nothing to do with the people tell me the president eats pretzels. Yeah, and some kind of who cares? He would not serve jelly beans if he makes a feast. No, I'm just saying, but the bottom, he's not. He could have a lousy eating habits, but when he makes a meal, this has to be a respectful meal. Then nothing to do what he does in private. In private, he eats also Cheerios and he eats potato chips and who knows what he does. That doesn't mean that's not.
It's very, very subjective. It could be any wealthy person makes a meal. And that's
Not any. It has to be. This is a choshev thing.
and you'll find out. It's not that
What is it? What are you
It's
saying?
not the wealthy. It's what today we call a ball, fundraising, a wedding. That is called the Shulchan Shemulachim.
Let's say a knedlach and like a very fancy wedding, but knedlach are not fancy food. But people would serve it. How do you know? We're not there. We'll get there. People serve it. Yeah.
What are we trying to say? What we're saying?
We're trying a food that's cooked to be a problem of Bishul Akum has to be food that you would serve it as a choshev ball. If you invite something important to your house, you're not going to make gefilte fish. You're not going to make, mashed potatoes.
What does this have to do with the?
So then there's no Bishul Akum. So if the shiksa made, someone not Jewish made food, but let's say tuna fish. Everyone tumbles about the tuna fish is Bishul Akum. Some of the tuna fish, Bishul you saw, it's hilarious. No one will serve tuna fish for your mother-in-law, unless you don't like her. But let's face it, you have your mother-in-law coming over and your wife wants to make a meal for the in-laws, she's not going to serve a tuna fish.
So this whole thing about Bishul Yisrael on tuna fish is really nourish?
It's a narish azach.
On the water. It's on, yeah.
This is what
I remember,
the shiksa can make everyday food, but not fancy.
You need visual Yisrael on the tuna, or you don't?
No, you don't.
You don't.
The tuna fish in the can you don't. We'll get to it. We'll get to great length as we go along, but I want to just focus one more Moshe because the back and forth the Shulchan Aruch is going to bounce. So there's bishul, which needs something choshev to be cooked, and pas doesn't need. It could be the cheapest bread. If it's bread, it's pas akim. If bread does not have that criteria because
It's subjective. We don't care. We don't eat the doim anymore today to make the bread.
that doesn't make a difference.
It's subjective.
That doesn't make a difference. But Chazal originally asked it because people make your wife doesn't make homemade challahs. Not some, but many women are very proud. They make challahs and they're very proud of it, and they give challahs to the neighbors and they take my challah. Women take a lot of pride in it. No. That will later see. Once the Chazal asked it, we don't care. If you know, you don't know. It's a company makes it. Chazal asked it, they made loy plig because then it's going to be. Besides what pas, we later learned the Chazal made big kulas because bread they saw people couldn't accept the gzeda. Because pas yichya adam bread is staple. In America, Baruch Hashem, bread is not the staple. Bread is
So originally it sounds like Bishul Akum was actually more lenient.
No.
And it switched around the
Right,
other side.
well, both were the same. In the past, they made it lenient because they saw it was impossible. It was literally very, very difficult.
No, but I'm saying that the Shulchan Aruch,
Oh, that's what you mean. That
he
right.
didn't
That
apply to bread,
right.
whereas
That's
it
true.
did to cook.
Right. Right. Well, that's a shalom. No. Some say what you're saying. Some say that's a machlokes in the Achronim how to explain it. Some say what he just said. Bread itself is choshev. We don't care. And some will say no, but bread is just als like plague. I remember this doesn't say in the Rishonim clearly, but that's what it was. Okay, so let's see the machaber. Asri chachamim lechel pas shel akim. You're not allowed to eat bread from a goy. Third line. Mishim chasnas, intermarriage. You hear your boy say, Chazal did not want you to eat bread of a goy because of intermarriage, he says. A fila b'mukin delekim mishim chasnas. So the Shach says, you know what that means? He's a galach. He's a soris. How you say soris in English?
Can't have kids.
How do you say in English? Eunuch. So you can't have kids. Doesn't make a difference. Doesn't mean he has to have a daughter. He has no daughters. He never will have daughters. He's an old man. Doesn't make. Chazal made a leplig. There's a fildak mishum chasnusa. V'lei asra ele pas shechameshes mine dogan. The 5 types of grain, which is we mentioned the names before. Ava pas shel kitnius. They used to make bread made out of kidneys or beans. Shel oid rice. Most poskim translate oid is rice. The only reason Chabad does it because the times of the Shulchan Aruch Harav, they did not know that's Machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. So Rashi and Tosfos, and so they were machmer. But later, like many of the new Rishonim that came out, we all see that oides speak to Persians. They say the Lucian, right? You're Persian. The people speak Persian say that the word oides in Persian is rice and doichen is millet.
I know that in Portuguese, it's arroz. Arroz.
Is rice.
Arroz.
That's
Right.
what it is.
Right.
How much it
Spanish.
is? Huh?
Reg and millet. How do you say millet? Yeah, I remember that's our rice. They tell me. Anyway, so the kids man older Rishonim beside they started with Rashi, but anyways, oides is rice, doichen is millet, ein bechal pas stam shasi. Okay. Now you see what the Ramah is saying. The small letters is the Ramah. You know. Just to make it to me, the Machab. It's very interesting history. The Machab, the Beis Yosef wrote the Shulchan Aruch. He wrote the Shulchan Aruch, and the Moshe Isser, the Machab lived in Mitzrayim, and then he moved to Tzvas. Famous Beis Yosef lived the same time as the Rizal. The Beis Yosef son married the Rizal's daughter. I think something like that, or the vice versa. I forgot. This was the famous Chavraya and Tzvas, where the holy city of Tzvas, and the Rizal is a Machlokes. He was a Sfardi Ashkenazi. We don't know. No. His name was Ashkenazi. Yeah, but still, his name was Ashkenazi. And many claim that he was Ashkenazi. They're not sure. So I don't know if you know, let me just quickly say that in the times of the Beis Yosef, the greatest, somehow the Shulchan Aruch had to be done, and we had this abnormal, incredible neshumas. Was the Rizal, and all the Chassidus, the entire Tanya is based on the Rizal. I mean, the Rizal was frightening. You know how old the Rizal was when he died? 36. He wrote with his Talmud. Yeah, but what? He started writing. He was 15, but the Rizal, let me just tell you, the Rizal taught his Talmud 20 months. To learn the Kisser Rizal could take you 10 years to understand it well, unless you're brilliant. It's amazing what was in such a short time. There's a famous saying from the Rizal, Kevuchar Hashem is Tzion, Hashem chose Tzion, Ivu, L'Moshe V'lo. Ivu means desire to say. Ivu, Ba'at Bash. You know what At Bash means? You take an aleph, becomes a tuf. You know what At Bash means? You read, is Ivu is Tzvas. You take the words Ivu, the Rizal, Kivuchar Hashem Tzion. So the Rizal says when Tzion, Kivuchar is Chorav. When Tzion is Chorav, the word Buchar, in the other rearranged letters, is Chorav. When Tzion is Chorav, Ivu Tzvas, the Shekhinah is in Tzvas. The Shekhinah was in Tzvas, and Vachaber then they made the Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah who lived in Kruke wanted to make a Shulchan Aruch. He heard there was the Beis Yosef wrote his Shulchan Aruch. So this is called the Shulchan Aruch, and he called his Sefer the tablecloth. This is called the Shulchan Aruch, the table prepared. So he called his Sefer the Mappa, the tablecloth. But anyway, that's the Ramah. The small AC is always the Ramah. We Ashkenazim are extremely lucky because the Ramah went and wrote down all the minhagim. The Sfardim ad hayoyim hazeh suffer. They don't know the minhagim. Moshe, I'm teaching a chassan, and his parents are Egyptian, right? So I'm teaching him Hilchos Nida. So and I told him that Rabbi Yosef claims that there's one question about the 5 days, 4 days, you only 4 days, because they don't know the minhagim. There's no mistake. We have the more rights in the Akduma. I wrote the Sefer that not only should we have the Halacha, but to keep the minhagim, because let me tell you,
You're saying the Mechaber only wrote halacha, but
not minhagim. And the Ramah came, said the halacha about the Ashkenazim, and he says, I will incorporate the minhagim. There's a frightening story I heard from my Rebbe, who never liked to say stories unless and I found this in a Sefer, The Ramah did his minig. Let me explain to you something. It's kedai to know this story. The Ramah was Rav in Kruke. Now, in Krakow, what do you call it today? And what happened was that there was a minig, when he came Rav in Kruke, there was a minig, that the mikveh yid, that means there was a couple, the lady was would tell her husband who went to the mikveh last night, and in the morning he will go over to each man and say Mazel Tov. Walk over to this guy, Mazel Tov, that's it. To tell him that his wife went to the mikveh last night. A modern minig. Strange minig, right? And the reason the minig was, because you have to remember, today, Baruch Hashem, the Baruch Hashem blessed us beyond anyone could have ever imagined. Our mikvahs are beautiful, comfortable. You know, those mikvahs was freezing cold. You know how they used to go into the mikvah in the winter? They would heat up a rock, and they would throw in the rock, and take a little bit of chill out, and the lady would go into the mikvah. It was freezing cold. I mean, it was just, terrifying cold. Not just, you know what I mean? It was just, so some people would not want to go. And it was like, this was the minik he would go. The remote came, and he was mavatal the minik. The next day, the same day in the afternoon, there was a Shiurim Bezdin. The husband comes. Now the next day the husband comes. He wants to divorce his wife. What happened? She didn't go to the mikveh. How do you know she didn't go to the mikveh? He didn't say Mazel Tov. So I went over to the guy. Why did you tell Mazel Tov? The Rabbi said I should stop. So I'll ask my wife. And he asked his wife, and she didn't go to the mikveh taka. She found out that the new Rav in the city was mavatul this minute, and she, was very. The mikveh was horrifying, cold. She didn't go. So the Ramu took upon himself to write a sefer and never to mavatul the minhagim, which are so strange. The Ramu says, but he brings it down. We are very lucky in that way. We Ashkenazim. That I see always the Sfardim struggle. Like you ask a Sfardi, same city, they don't, we have the, and what happened is because of the Ramah, this Ashkenazim Machabrim, who wrote Svarim, kept on bringing them in Hogim. Mushal, the Rav or the Shach would say, how the meaning is still. The Rav always mentions them in Hogim. You know what I mean? Kept on because we had part of the Ashkenazim Misoida was that we write Svarim and we write how the tradition is still going, or it is or not. But the Svarim didn't have that.
Points out it's an Ashkenazi minhag. Doesn't it mean that whatever the Machaber talks about means it's Svarim?
Machaber is the Svarim found the Machaber. That's true. But but the Machaber doesn't bring minhagim. Period. There's certain minhagim. Doesn't bring the Svardish minhagim. Period. Doesn't say. Doesn't bring any minhagim. It's just halacha. Okay, so the Ramah comes, he says, so here, Yankee, this is the Ramah opposite what you just said before. The Ramah says that the rice bread, he said, why isn't the problem of Bishul Akum? He says, you're right, it's a problem of Bishul Akum if rice bread is oil al shulchan malochem. You hear what the Ramah said? I have rice that I make bread out of it. So it's not pasakim, because bread is only the 5 grains. So how about bishul akum? So let's find out in your community if they would serve rice bread at a bowl, at a choshev meal. If yes, if they would serve rice bread, then it's all it's bishul akum. So you see clearly, you hear, Yankee, that you can have rice that is served and not served. The only thing they make such a thing like plig is meat. They talk about meat, and so even though the meat now is, the latest get to Bishul. Tuna is a good example. The tuna is never served the way, I've gone to a meal, a brunch, they give tuna steaks, but never out of a can. Never. I asked this to people because when they made this tumult about the anyway, so I'm saying it's.
So it matters how it's prepared.
Yes, this we're going to see the whole time. What do you say?
It's a scam.
Yeah, this is a big scam. It's just to make people nervous. Yes.
Initially you saw on tuna fish.
On tuna, yeah.
Canned tuna fish. Not as a whole.
Canned tuna. But it was originally a tuna steak, but they cooked it with the cans, so that's Bishul Akum.
No.
If
They,
it was a steak-
no. I went to this tuna company. I'll tell you, if they do it the same way, 15, 20 years ago, before they stopped making it here, you asked me to go to one of the people working there asked me to go there. So I saw how they do it. They take the fish, raw fish, and they put it into a steamer. They cook tuna fish in a steam. The reason they do it, it preserves the taste. But you would never serve that. I saw that came out. You would never serve it. It doesn't look good. It's very not appetizing. In a can, you open it, no one cares. But if you see it how it looks, it's very not. I say nicht betamt. Not appetizing is the best word in English. It's very not. I've been by fancy brunches. In the morning, they would serve tuna steak. They would take raw tuna. They would, broil it. They would,
But you said it's a full tuna, so it's the same piece of fancy tuna.
It's not, but it's steamed. So the way that no one would use steamed tuna. Doesn't look good. It's not appetizing. I'm just saying, part of food.
Food is the way it's prepared.
100%.
So you can take two tunas with two goyim, and one guy steams it, and that one you can eat, and the other guy grills it nice and seared, and that one you can't.
Yeah, but later learn there's what is not so clear what you just said, but that's clear. If it's steamed, no one ever would use that no one would use steamed fish for brunch, for choshev brunch, no one. Besides that, I was told, I don't know, I have to ask people, recently people have told me, that most of sushi is made with tuna. Who eats sushi?
A lot of it is,
Yeah, so tuna is nechal chai. That's what I was told. I'm not sure, I have to.
It's raw. That's another reason why we don't care if it's Bishul Akum.
Yeah.
If you don't need it cooked, then even if it was
There's no chef in the audience here. No one?
we have a chef. We have a big chef in the audience. We have chefs in the audience.
It's not a sushi chef. Fish is a little bit.
What is normal?
In the 9 days, Jeff doesn't know.
No, because I don't know. I asked these people who, I'm curious if it's that true. All, tuna is that to make.
Most expensive sushi in the world is made from tuna, by far.
Yeah, the better.
It's also from a special
Bluefin
farm
tuna.
tuna.
The belly of a bluefin tuna.
It's also the center cut
Yeah.
of the yellowtail or the
I don't know,
bluefin.
bluefin.
Center cut. It
Called
can't even be from another part of the fish. It should be-
Called the otoro.
So according to that, it's only that piece which you could.
No, but I was told the cheap ones, people use regular tuna. You go to a sushi bar, not expensive. One of the people in my community, the Jets boys were just begged me every time afterwards. They had a guy made a l'chaim, and everything was just sushi, all different types of sushi. I didn't touch it, people have this. Anyway, so if the people told me there was, but also then told me there's cheap and there was expensive ones, and it became today became a whole hobby.
But if only the fancy tuna can be eaten raw, then
No.
No, that's not true.
That's not true. They're choshev. If you want to pay $30 for a piece, then you eat this name. What he said.
Exactly. You get the spicy tuna. They're not taking the good stuff. The cheap stuff.
that's why they spice it up, so you don't know the difference.
Exactly.
But it's fresh. Oh, you have finished, invite it.
Okay.
Let's go get some sushi.
Okay, let's which Shach? Let's see Shach Gimel. I want to show you Shach Gimel. Shach asks a very, very important kasha, and some of you will be shocked. Look at Shach Gimel. Shach asks, wait a minute, the goy cooked in a scaly. So why does the Shulchan Aruch say over here you could eat it? You know, why do we need a special Gzeira of Pasakim, and if it's made out of rice bread instead, he cooked it in his oven. Imagine you would tell a guy, my rabbi said that if the goy has rice bread, my neighbor made rice bread, the shiksa negdo rice bread, I could eat it. How do I know what kelim he made it? What? It's like a modern Orthodox rabbi maybe. Saying that, the shiksa made rice bread. So the shach is asking this question. How could
Restaurants are okay.
So how could you buy rice bread from how the shiksa next door makes you rice bread and you say you could eat it? Made it in her oven and made it in her kelim and what? So the shach. Avam shingila akim. You see gimel? That's us gimel on the left side. Avam gila akim means the kelim spit out. Gil means to spit out. The kelim to give out. Lekel amechish the stam keleim einem ben yoimoy. A stam keli of a goy is eine ben yoimoy. That means you could assume that the oven was not a ben yoimoy. You could assume the keli that she heated up, whatever she needed for the thing was eine ben yoimoy. So it was no satam of gam, and there's no problem. Means, let me tell you, a keli that was used, the last time the neighbor cooked in it was 24 hours ago. So even though now she's cooking something, preparing the rice to make rice bread or whatever she's preparing, is right now, the food some taste will come out of the pan into the food, but that is, since it was used 24 hours ago, we say the taste that comes out is nois and tam of gam, has a blemished, what's the word in English? A blemished, not good taste. So I'm like, I buy it. Yes, very good. I am not allowed to tell the goy to do it, but once the goy did it, I'm like allowed to buy it. Well, he asked, no, yeah, you're talking about greens are kosher. But what he's asking is very good. He's saying, I'm not allowed to tell a goy to cook in his kelim, but when the goy did it for himself, comes to me, I want to taste my rice bread today. Oh, I am allowed to lick it, eat it, and I'm allowed to buy it.
Why can we trust him?
Why we trust him? Kashas. I'm just saying. Chazal said that probably it's not a factory; it's a neighbor who cooks from. We have a right to assume that the kelim, the dishes that she cooked today, the rice bread, were 24 hours old. Listen carefully. The ingredients, you have to know the ingredients. Those days, rice bread was rice bread.
You know what I'm saying? If you were like, hi, what's your ingredients? I do this, and that's it. You don't believe it.
No, you never believe a goy.
That's what I'm asking.
That's but the point is the rice bread was not put in those days.
When you know that there's
And those days
Look
today.
at France, when you buy bread over there, everybody knows that the bread
Side of
has
water,
flour,
side of
water,
chocolate, and
salt,
everything's
and
fine.
yeast, that's it.
Those days.
No lard in bread, anywhere in France.
No, I'm just explaining bread today you're right. Today the OU says that you have to check bread, you have to check everything because today today it's mass produced, it's competition, and each one comes up every few years with a new chiddush. About 15, 20 years ago, the tuna companies came up with a big chiddush. They put powder milk into the tuna fish. It was an uproar. First they didn't chap, and then somebody finally caught on to it because it was a chol of stam, the power. Why did they put it in? They figured out that if you put powdered milk, it makes it feel fresher, retains its freshness. So it's a chemical thing, nothing to do with the name. It was a big tumult then. Anyways, the tuna company stopped doing it because a lot of people so it backfired for them. Nothing to do with being eaten. Just happened to be back.
So people buy the kosher company tuna. They get nothing to do with
That's the same. I'm going to tell you something. The tuna fish, the same guy does for the OU, for the OK, for the Dugim. One day puts on such a hat, one day it's a Lubavitcher hat, and it's a Satman hat, another day it's the same ashgiach.
No, but the Costco tuna is not the same.
The same tuna. They trade on. I want to tell you, there's one big company that does it today in Philippines, and South Asia. You stop doing it, it's cheap over there. There's a mashgiach there, and he puts on the hat. one day it's a hat of Al-Babich. He happens to be Al-Babich Shlich, I think. So one day it's Al-Babich head, and the next day when he does it for the Satman, he puts on a Satman hat. The OU takes off the hat. It's the same thing. It's all the same. So. Anyways, I just want to say, so this is very important. We're talking about of the kelim of the goy, so we have a right to assume that it's any ben yoimai. So it's not a problem, and even like a tchille, you're allowed to buy it.
We're talking about, what about like a vegan restaurant? Like, all the ingredients are like, they have the pure stuff and, they're cooking and what?
Well,
check the vegetables?
Besides that, I don't want to. That's a long discussion. You could remind me. I don't want to get. We go sidetracked. We'll be another get. This is an important question. That's harichas. I will talk about it later.
But just to
Remind me. I don't want to. Take me a long time to explain.
just to clarify, back then, what ingredients were in the dish wasn't that problematic. It was more about the kalim, and he says the kalim's not a problem.
Yeah, let's say the oven. You made it in an oven. You made it in a.
Today, we're saying that. Okay, maybe the kalim also wouldn't be a problem today, but the ingredients would be.
But first of all, the kalim today is a problem. These huge companies, the kalim.
Huge company, I'm saying you're getting it from
Oh,
your
for a
neighbor.
neighbor, the only thing you have to know is ingredients. And if you know that it's because today we do come up with such interesting ideas. If you look in cookbooks, you see, the same thing that you add. You can figure out, add a little bit of this, add a little bit of this. It's a, bread. That Wonder bread is not bread. They put who knows what.
Filter fish is also not fish anymore. Everything else like fish.
Yeah, they figured out what big part. I once spoke to someone who works. He was a chemist for Nabisco. He told me a big chelik of his work was as a chemist to figure out not just to give it a good taste, to make it addictive. So he says Pringles. They figured out Pringles very good. Yes, but it's addictive. People tell me it's addictive. No.
You really can't stop.
I don't know. I don't like it. But people tell me that I see from my teens when they were teens. Once the whole thing would go. So that's part of the trick. They're busy today. They pay people who knows money just to figure out and to make it tasty and so we can't rely that it's pure. Nothing is pure.
Paskim today hold that they hold this today?
Yes. Let me tell you more. Let me tell you a frightening thing. This I will say, go off topic because he says, are you allowed to be machmer? A guy's going to say, listen, the Shulchan Aruch says that the bread is good. It's not for me. This is a man, a rabbi could say that. I don't want to do it. I want machmer. There's a frightening Yerushalma. The Yerushalma says that oil. The Yerushalma says originally oil was part of the Gzeira. Original. And they took off the Gzeira. So the Gemara says like this. I forgot the name. One was said, they were eating together. One ate. They didn't want to eat. It has oil in it. And oil, the guy cooked oil in his kalim. The oil was made, and the neighbor made his olive oil in his kalim. So didn't want to eat. He said to him, if you're not going to eat, you are called a zukin mamre. You know what a zukin mamre means? Yes, a zukin mamre is one of the four people you stone to death, and you wait till it comes the regel that everyone knows that he was stoned to death because he argued on the Sanhedrin. So Rav told Shmuel, I think Shmuel told Rav, if you're going to be machmer, you call the zukin mamre. Chazal said it's okay, you have no right to be machmer. So a guy's going to say, look, the rabbi said you can eat the rice bread, it's not for me. The guy cooked in his kalim. If you're machmer, you call the zukin mamre.
Unless he has reason to be skeptical. Unless he has reason for that.
Chazal said eat it. Why is he reason?
Today we don't do it because the ingredients are complicated.
All right, that's it, but that it's not a complicated ingredients, for sure. Which is, let me tell you, people made a tumult about the oils made in companies. You know what I mean? I don't have a good mushroom right now, and I don't have to remind myself. But the bottom line is, I remember Rav, when I was young, I'm almost sure. I was very, very young. I remember Rav getting up and blasting Ashgocha because they saw me on Eine Ben Yoimoy. So I thought, Taka. When I started learning Yeridea, I was so angry. I was very young. I was about 13 years old. When I learned Yeridea, it was much later. It was about 10 years later. I got so angry. Like, what did the Rabbanan? Says Shulchan Aruch, like a tchila, you're allowed to buy from a goy. Once you know there's not a problem, you're not only allowed to, you're not allowed to be machmer. You hear this? You can't say, I want to be machmer.
Based on the Yerushalmi?
Based on the Yerushalmi.
The ingredients say pure oil. That's it.
Today, but he asked, what's your first name again? This is a long discussion, but I will discuss it another time. But they say the ingredients, you could be relying on it, because if they lie, they could be sued, bam. If you know worries of the ingredients, and you only worry about the kalim, if it's Eini Ben Yomer, you never know a company if it's Eini Ben Yomer. That's another big problem. But you know that it's not a problem, then there's nothing you could look at Chila by.
Even if it's an oil company?
You see, oil company, the problem is yes, even oil company. The reason is they use the machines. They use the keep them. It's never rests. It's a 24-hour shift sometimes.
So halacha is based on your name. What if you look at a restaurant, or is that
A restaurant has the problem because the restaurant they keep cook every day fresh.
So if you walk into a restaurant and say, "Don't give me a plot, you don't get this today."
You can't trust the guy. You can never trust the guy.
How do you trust the neighbor?
You only trust the guy. No, we trust because the Chazal said the kalim is Ein Ben Yoin, not because the person said. You want to just